My household kind of broke down, fell apart when I was quite young. So I found myself homeless. Being homeless is one thing, being lonely is a different thing. I found myself in a very lonely space. I went back to God, thought, okay, well, no one person is not going to leave me. I was a leader only on paper. The leader I am today is not the leader I'm going to be in 10 years. And I hope that I'm a better leader, a more rounded leader, a more inclusive leader. I talk about refinement a lot. Everyone wants to be the finished article. Everyone wants to be the polished, shiny new thing. And it just doesn't work like that. You're telling it in like a couple of minutes. So you're like, boom, boom, boom. Everyone's like, wow, what a great trajectory. Not knowing the trenches that we had to crawl through to get here. When you come from lower socioeconomic background, or you come from an underserved community, you get your first job, you put a lot of emphasis on that company. Wow, I'm so grateful that you gave me a job. I'm so grateful that I'm here. There's a saying, go when it's easiest to stay when it's easiest to go. When I actually was able to lend my voice to topics and really talk about it, and people were listening and engaging and following, I took my power back. Realizing my voice has value and power, it unlocks something in you that allows you to grow at an exponential rate. And I think that's what happened to me. Either sink or you swim. You've got to choose one.
On today's episode of Everyday Leadership, I have the absolute pleasure of talking to Hannah Awonuga. Hannah is an award-winning global head of diversity, equity, and inclusion at Knight Frank. She is a wife. She is a mother of three. She is an amazing woman of God. She is someone who is making changes and moves, not just in her industry, but actually impacting so many people, the next generation coming up. And her story is one that I've been eager to delve into ever since I met Hannah, what, 3, 4 years ago now? I think we had a conversation. So thank you very much for coming on today's show.
No worries. Finally, right? I'm so sorry on
Finally.
my part, but so excited to be here with you. I've been following and watching all the amazing stuff that you do, and every time I see a podcast, I was like, "Oh my god, that was amazing! I need to get on there." And then I look at my diary. So just happy to be here to be speaking to you today, Shopper.
So when someone introduces you, what is important for you that they say about you?
What is important for them to say when they introduce me? Definitely in a professional capacity, it's Hannah. This is Hannah. She, is committed to making impact in the world, committed to driving change for underrepresented communities. I think that's really important to me. She's a woman of God. I think that's something that I hold really dearly. Um, yeah, and then just I suppose it the way I've always the way I've always kind of been wanted to position myself as a thought leader, so somebody who people can learn from, and so that's also important.
Think about that thought leader piece. I think there are a lot of people who look at your journey and they see the now. They see all you've been able to do and accomplish, the awards, the move, especially over the last 5 years or
Yeah,
so, that people are like, my gosh, you just accelerated. But it's not acceleration because you've been in this game for almost 20
yeah,
years. Like
yeah,
you've
yeah,
been you've
yeah.
been doing things for a very long time. So if I was to go way back, even longer than that, to the younger you, under 10, Hannah, growing up in Bermondsey, what were you like then?
What was I like? Interesting. What was I like? I think I was always curious, life and soul of the party. You know, always very sociable type of person, young person, I would say, and yeah, just wanted to connection is really important to me. Relationships are really important to me, and so yeah, that's how I've fostered a lot of everything I've done has been because of that relationship building, that connection with people. So yeah, that was the younger me. We all evolve, right? So there's been several evolutions since then.
We do all evolve, but I think there's always Here's what I always ask. I think that's probably the one question I ask on most podcasts is when you look at people's journeys in the past, even you talking about like connection and fostering that, and then look at what you're doing right now, there's so many
Yeah,
links
synergies, yeah.
that you can see how that's built up over the years. And obviously you navigated even as a teenager, again, you were very, very different because your teenage years were quite different from a
Yeah,
lot of people
yeah,
where you
yeah.
were living by yourself, I think about 15.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So I've been living independently since I was 15. My household kind of broke down, fell apart when I was quite young. And so I found myself homeless. And so long ago now, but vividly remember just being at a crossroad in terms of life choices. At that age, you should be thinking about college, going out with friends, thinking about GCSEs and all of that. And yeah, I was thinking about them things, but I also had to think about where am I going to live and how am I going to support myself. And then when I was 16, I made the decision. That's probably the first crossroad. Made the decision that actually I'm going to go and work, and I joined the Halifax as a cashier. It's my first ever job.
When you at that age, 16, making a tough decision around where your life should go to next. Were you a Christian those days?
I was a Christian. Yes, I was, but I wouldn't say a committed and devout or even really close to God at that point. That changed quite quickly, 17, 18. That changed when I found myself. Being homeless is one thing, being lonely is a different thing. So, um, when I found myself in a very lonely space, I went back to God. Thought, okay, well, no one person that's not going to leave me. you one person that won't leave me. And so that's when I first found myself back in the church.
When you, I just want to ask you that question. I'm curious, like, did you have anyone around you to navigate, or how did you make that decision and that choice that I want to do next for you at such a young age?
In what respect? In from a religious perspective or work or what do you mean?
No, from a work
Yeah,
perspective, deciding to like, I'm going to go down the path and start working for Halifax
yeah.
rather than trying to go to university or anything else like that.
Really interesting. So, back in the day when Nigerians or African people, Nigerians mainly from my own experience, came to this country and they used to send their kids to live outside London with white people. Have you ever heard of that?
Yeah.
So that happened to me, and I went to live with Lynn and Mike when I was a baby, and I came back when I was about 7 or 8 years old, and so I was still in contact with them. They were my family, that's all I knew. And so I remember calling Lynn, and she said, "Well, you got two choices: either you're going to come back to Dorset, or you go and get yourself a job." And I was like, "I'm definitely not coming back to Dorset." And she said, "Go and get yourself a job in a bank or something." That's what I did. So it's just as simple as that at that time, to be honest. I called her and she was just like, well, this is where you are. No point sobbing about it. Either come to Dorset or you go and get yourself a job, start your life. And so that little bit of straight talking is exactly what I did. And then I remember rocking up. I'm sure I've told this story several times. Rocking up to Halifax for my interview, hooded jacket, pair of jeans, trainers. Didn't know how to dress for an interview. Everyone else around me was in white and black suits. Didn't understand that either. I was like, what on earth? Why are they all dressed up, all smart? And then I realized, well, it's an interview, right? and and the lady who interviewed me was, she said, look, Hannah, I really like you. And I really like you. And so she gave me a chance. Said, go and get yourself jeans and go and get yourself a shirt and a pair of trousers and come back for a second interview.
So you got a job that's looking the way that you did, whereas everyone else suited and booted. It didn't make much of a difference. Okay,
Mm.
okay.
Well, do you know what? It didn't. Not well. Did it make a difference? If it was somebody else, it might have. And this is the power of on the spot mentoring, right? This is the power of seeing beyond what you can see and listening to what you can hear. Because actually, she looked past the hooded jacket. She heard me. I was talking about being a prefect and what I loved about being a prefect in school and how personable I am and all of these things. And that's what she saw. And so it might have mattered to somebody else, but it depends on the type of leader you are. If you're a leader who actively looks out for talent, actively looks out to support people, who can identify when somebody needs coaching or support, then that's where that's where equity comes. That's where people like me get an opportunity, and that's how I see it.
How is it possible that with what you were navigating, being homeless and everything else, you were still a prefect at school, you were still personable, you were not, it's not like you were jaded, you weren't down on yourself, you had a very different mindset mentality that you'd expect someone to have going through that. What was it that helped you stay on point, stay on track, stay in that space? 'Cause that's not easy, especially at that age.
Yeah, what was it? I don't know. I've always been ambitious, a go-getter, at school. I was that girl who was, sometimes I was in trouble, sometimes I wasn't, and like I was on this discovery, self-discovery, and but I knew I wanted more. I knew I had more. I knew I could give more. I never really fitted in school actually. Though I never had a girl group or a squad. I kind of like floated around different people, and so I've always kind of been that self starter, that go getter, and really relied and betted on myself. Um, and then also, when you are put in a situation where you either sink or you swim, you got to choose one. Like you got to, and so I just chose. I decided that actually that's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna try. I'm gonna swim. Metaphorically though, because I can't actually swim, which is so embarrassing. But oh my dear.
So when you started your career, 17, Halifax, and then obviously moving to Barclays, and then you start to, at that point in time, did you see it as a career? Or was it just like, you know what, I'm here, I'm gonna make some money, gotta move forward, and then I'll figure the rest out.
Yeah, it was that at the time. At the time, it was that. It was 16. I was 16 at Halifax, joined Barclays when I was 17. And then it was still like, okay, banking is good, it's safe. The banks at the time, it's like the banks are safe. It's not so much now. Um, and so I joined Barclays. And at the time, it was kind of like I needed money because I needed to pay for my hostel, I needed to pay for my flat, and then all of these things. So, um, but then a couple of years after, I'd done the role for a couple of years now, started to understand how you navigate this space, my boss, and like all of them things that actually you're not really. Nobody warns you, nobody prepares you for that type of stuff, especially where you come from, where I come from. I remember like I was 3.5 years into the role, and I said, right, if I'm going to make a career out of this, I probably need to go to uni. So, I plucked up the courage and I went into my boss's office and I said, I'm leaving. And he went, what? I said, yeah, I know. I need to go and get a degree if I want to, sassy young me. And he said, well, Barclays have just announced that they are doing a degree program. It's their first year, but, why don't you try? And then I said, okay. And it's a fully sponsored degree. So I said, okay, right. So I contacted them and they said, well, you need 120 UCAS points. I said, what the hell is a UCAS? I didn't know, I didn't know. I said, I didn't go to college, so I definitely don't have that. But I have been at Barclays for 4 years and it's a Barclays degree. So I know a lot about Barclays. And so they gave it to me. They said, all right, yeah, fair dues. And they said they took me on merit and they took me onto the program. So I did a 3-year sponsored degree in management and leadership with Anglia Ruskin University, and started. That's when I really started my leadership journey. I finished the degree, and I was 21, and I became a bank manager. That was the job that I was given when I came off the program.
At 21.
Mm, yeah, I
Wow.
know. I walked into the branch and I was like, have they really trusted me? Have they trusted me to run this branch? And it was awesome. Awesome. Baptism of fire. But awesome. Because I had firstly I had the theory, right? I just done this degree in leadership and management. So had that part. And then I had then the personality that I had, which was passion, energetic, relationship building. It felt like it was a perfect combination. And yeah, it's my first leadership role. I In the degree though, just like a graduate degree, whilst I was doing my degree, I was also working for Barclays, and so I was doing rotational roles. So I had done assistant manager there, I had done operations manager, I had done all of these things to prepare me for the bank manager job. That's how the degree program worked. So it wasn't like I was going in and didn't know what I was doing. I had been working in the branches for a long time, knew how they operated, knew how they worked. And so when I was coming off the degree program, they asked me what I wanted to do. I said, well, actually, I really love leadership. And they were like, well, we've got a branch for you. Would you be open to taking it? And I said, yeah, let's do it. Like, let's do it. And so I did.
What were if you can remember, some of your biggest, say, lessons that you learned from that period of time?
I remember a couple of the first conversations I had with my team. One of them was a cashier. She'd been a cashier for 30 years, so a cashier more longer than I was alive. And she definitely made me know that that was a thing. And she also had children that were older than me. So,
Okay.
so she was like, "I have daughters that are older than you." And I think, and I appreciate that. I always remember that her name was Yvonne. She was a lovely lady. We got on so well after that. But I think what you learn about leadership and what leadership really is two different things. And so I I was a leader only on paper. Nobody was following me anywhere. I didn't have a vision. I didn't have, I wasn't leading them somewhere. I didn't know. So I think that my first leadership role really taught me that leadership is about building an environment where people will follow you, will trust you, will perform for the vision that you have. If you don't have no vision, what we're doing. And so I think the early years of kind of the early times as a branch manager, just you do this and you do that and you do this, it weren't working. And so actually, that team, that branch, that period in my time really helped me understand what it meant to be a leader. And then ever since, I've been refining that and refining that and refining that. And yes, it has worked. I love leadership. I love being able to um, lead people, help people find their own purpose, achieve, perform, grow a business.
Mm.
Yeah.
How do you get people who have been working longer than you've been alive to buy into your vision? Because I remember when I ran my first team, it was very much the same scenario where I had people who were 15, 20 years older than me. And going in there, I was like, what am I going to teach you that? And it had to be a completely different way of getting to know them
Yeah.
and then leaning more into that and
Absolutely.
shaping things around them. So how did you navigate that and find that? Because even I think this day and age, there are a lot of younger people coming through who are leading teams, and it's teams of people who are a lot older than them. And they struggle sometimes because like, I'm not sure what I'm gonna do here.
So leadership is about people. If you decide that you want to be a leader, then you are submitting to others. You are serving others. Service-based leadership it's all there in the textbooks, right? So to me, it was about how do I serve you? What do you need? And for that particular lady, it weren't going to be promotion. She was happy doing her cashier role, You know, her kids are grown up now. She's a bit older. So therefore, it wasn't some of the people in my team. It was like, right, we're going to get you promoted. Let's do it. But before we can get you promoted, these are the things we have to do to get you there. So that was an easy driver, right? And usually with leadership, that is the easiest one. When you know somebody wants something, they want to progress. They've got their own career plan. It's easier for you to lead them because it's like, well, actually, okay, I can help you get there, but this is what we need to do together. That's easy. When you've got people who actually don't want they're not thirsty for the next role, they're not particularly ambitious in that way, that is more challenging because then you have to then meet them in a different place.
Yeah.
And so for me, there were a number of young women in my team like that who actually they weren't really wanting the next role. They didn't want my job. They didn't want the next role. And so to me, it was like, well, what is your driver? Why'd you come to work? Why are you here? Like, you could be anywhere. You could have any job. Why are you doing this job? I love my customers. All right, brilliant. Let's make you the best customer service person you can be. How can I support you? Let me give you training so that you know how to navigate tough conversations, so that when you're dealing with your customers, you know how to respond. It's that, right? It's about, why are you doing what you're doing? I know why I'm doing what I'm doing. Why are you doing what you're doing? And then helping them navigate that. And I had people that were like, I hate it here. I was like, okay, well, let's work with that. Where do you want to be? Well, I need it for the money. Okay, well, while you're here, right? If money is important to you, if money is a driver for you, then we need to keep your job. So these are the things you need to do in order for you to keep your job. That's how I navigated that. And
You, when I listen to you say that, there's a phrase that comes to mind when it says wisdom beyond your years. That strikes me because it's not an easy way to actually think about people, think about connecting. That where have you gained your wisdom from that's been helped you to be able to navigate personally and professionally, to be able to then pour into other people as well?
I think that I have had to, I've had to build a resilience, right? That means that I always have to look for a way to make my situation successful. I've had to been resourceful. I'm in D&I, right? So I can't have a conversation without bringing out diversity and inclusion, socioeconomic. My socioeconomic background, coming from a lower socioeconomic background, has given me all of the traits, the talents, the personalities that you see today. I'm refined, right? I am a refined version of that rough diamond that was, the 17-year-old. But the way I grew up really helped me navigate what I want. Firstly, what I didn't want, I wasn't going back there. I wasn't going back to that life, right? To that struggle. That wasn't going to be my struggle, and it wasn't going to be my children's struggle. So that's a driver for me. And then also, as you go through life, as you navigate different experiences, the good, the bad, the hard, as you do all of that, you become more wise, right? Wisdom comes with time. My 16-year-old now thinks he's so wise, and I'm just like, all right, like, he just, and he's a phenomenal young man, but so much to learn, and I love that we've got a really good relationship, and so I find it interesting watching him grow up, now being who I am, where I am, and realizing some of my mistakes at that age, you know, and now being very conscious about helping him see things so that he doesn't make the mistakes that I made.
You have three amazing children. You're married. You have this amazing career, as well as different elements and stuff that you do for yourself as well. How do you manage to, I hate the word balance because I don't believe in balance. How do you manage to hold the connectivity between all the different elements? Even just right now, you talked about how close you are with your son and having that great relationship with him, which is such a precious thing and something I think we can easily take for granted. But it takes time, work, and effort to have great relationships with our children.
Yeah.
So, how do you manage to do that and hold those different elements?
So I don't have balance. I'm still working that one out. Right.
Balance doesn't work. There's no balance in life.
There isn't. You're right. I agree. But we live on a scale. That's how I. That's how I. Right. So sometimes it's up, sometimes it's down. I describe it as dial up and dial down. Sometimes I have to dial up being a mom.
Yeah.
Sometimes I have to dial up being a person, a career woman. Sometimes I have to dial up being a husband, a wife. Sorry, like all of them things are really important, you know. And I never fret from saying that they all hold the number one spot. You know, like my children don't hold the number one spot solely. My husband and my marriage doesn't hold the number one spot solely. There are a number of dimensions that hold the number one spot because they interchange between all. They're interconnected. My career is also in the number one spot. It's so important to me. It's the way it serves so many purposes. It fuels and funds the life that we live. It fuels and elevates the woman that I am. It gives me so much. I love my job. I love what I do. I love speaking about the things that I do. And so yeah, just I don't I try, you know, the one thing I don't focus on is my health and my well-being, really. Like, and so that's now, you know, that's now going to be, you know, the next couple of that's now going to be the next priority for me, I think, because it's important. I don't think I've put as much importance of it on it as I would have liked to.
What's your ideal scenario when Hannah slows down? What do you do?
When I slow down, I I'm just really still, like just in a still in a still environment where like not much is happening. There's not much movement, not much noise, and just really trying to connect with whatever's going on with me. Um, I've done therapy for a number of years, and one of the exercises that they sometimes get me to do is to like actively feel where I am, like my legs on the chair, my hands, you know, what's my breathing doing? Can I feel my heart beating? Like really slow things down. Um, that can really help you from a mindfulness perspective. So I try to do that, especially when things get so much, when things get so busy. It's like, can I find the time to get really comfortable in my chair and feel actually where I am and be still.
In that stillness, there a lot can be revealed. Do a lot of work around this when ask people to slow down and really connect with themselves. It's great, but it can also be very scary sometimes because of the things that do come up and the things
Yes.
that do bubble to the surface that your fast-paced life can easily become the things to mask all of that. And then when you go into that stillness, they're not coming up like, oh
Yeah, it's
yeah, I'm
exhausting.
still
That
know that.
stillness can be exhausting. Like, it's like, woof, that was heavy. Yeah, it can, and you have to sit with that, right? Like I try to sit with that as much as I can. Um, and don't get me wrong, I haven't got it right. I haven't got it perfect. It's not, but it's something I'm trying to work on.
I was gonna ask you, like, when you made that move, because you moved all the way throughout, obviously, Barclays, you were branch manager for a number of years, about what, 7 years, and you moved into like a small business area lead, and then you started to move into the organization.
Yeah.
Making those transitions, how easy did you find them, especially leaving somewhere after 7 years in there to then start to climb through the organizations and strategize that way?
Yeah, do you know what? When you start your career, you're
Hmm.
not quite sure where you want to get to, right? So you do a couple of things, you dabble, and then you think, oh, okay, I like this, and it sticks, and then you try to do more of that. So that's what happened with me. Like, I started in the branch, very much client based, very much customer facing. Did the roles, branch manager. Branch manager then gave me this a new taste of colleague development, people development, and so I loved that more than I loved clients. And so therefore I then started to lean more into that. So then after I did branch manager, then I became an area manager at the age of 23, and I was looking after 16 business managers across East London. And then I moved into my first head office role. But but all of them roles became very centered around the colleague experience. So the role that I moved into was colleague experience lead, looking after the National Geographic of Barclays, um, sorry, in the UK, from a colleague experience perspective, how we support our colleagues. You know, how do we empower them? Or cultural, all this cultural transformation stuff. Um, I did that. Really loved that. Really loved culture. But wanted to move away from. It was still the branch, but now it was a more strategic role. Wanted to kind of move away from that. The backdrop of that was that I never saw women who looked like me. I'm moving up slowly, 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 and still only being the black woman around that I knew. Um, and so therefore, that's where my passion, my curiosity for diversity came in, because it's like, well, actually, why is that? Why is it that I don't see people that look like me? Why is it that I don't see people that come from where I come from? And that's how I got into D&I. And then I got here and realized that this is exactly where God has wanted me to be all this time.
You had to fight though to get there. I know you make it like, yeah, I got hair.
I know. Yeah, it's so hard, isn't it? When you're telling your story, you tell it, and you're telling it in like a couple of minutes. So you're like, boom, boom, boom. Everyone's like, wow, what a great trajectory. Not knowing the trenches that we had to crawl through to get here. The rejections, the microaggressions, the racism, the the self doubt, the criticism. I did have a manager once told me that they thought that I'd be better placed in Tesco's. Like yeah, they were like, I don't think this place is for you. Like, you'd probably be better in somewhere like a Tesco's. I said, oh, okay, I'll show you. I'm more senior than that person now, by the way. But hey ho, by the by.
In that time, though, when someone gave you a comment like that, how did you respond?
Yeah, I was so young. I was so young, like it was early stages, so maybe I can relate to maybe why he would say something like that. But at the time, you just shun it off. You don't really connect with what they're really saying, right? Um, or whatever, and just continued, and then I moved, and then I went to another branch, and then that manager was so supportive of me and wanted put me up for awards, put me up for best sales and this, best sales and that. Then I thought, oh wow, somebody actually believes in me. It's their interactions, both good and bad, that help you with your refinement. I talk about refinement a lot because I think everyone wants to be the finished article. Everyone wants to be the polished, shiny new thing. And it just doesn't work like that. I'm constantly refining myself. The leader I am today is not the leader I'm going to be in 10 years. And I hope that I am a better leader, a more rounded leader, a more inclusive leader as I continue to grow. So a lot of my friends always say, "Oh, how do you work in corporate?" and I'm like, I love it. I really love it. And yes, I experience all sorts of microaggressions and all of that. I do. I'm not exempt from it, but it's part of the job. It's part of the world of work. And so actually, if you take it in your stride, it helps with your refinement. There's not much that I haven't seen. There's not much that people haven't said to me. And now I'm better at responding. Now I'm more assertive. Now I'm more present. Now I'm not more polished. I don't really like the word polished. Now I'm more refined. I wouldn't have done that if I was all sailing. If I didn't have all of the different experiences to help me get there. If that makes sense.
Can you point to a time when you can say that this was when I really stepped into my own. I really stepped into my voice, my assertiveness, and I owned who Hannah is.
Yeah, I think 2020 I started posting on LinkedIn, had about 500 followers. 2021 between 2020 and 2021 I started posting every week from my own lived experience. So I started telling my stories, like little anecdotes of different parts of my life, and people were responding, people were engaging, and that grew, right? And then people then reaching out to me and talking to me about how I'm inspiring them, how can I come and talk to their teams, can I come and do this, come and do that, whilst working at Barclays,
Wow.
gave me a power, a self power, like my own power that I didn't ever expect. I realized I came into my own, and I realized that actually I am, like I can be impactful and powerful, and I can help people and I can support people, and people will follow me, and I can engage in conversation. There was a period of time when I realized that actually I was bigger than what in one singular job. Does that make sense? That for a lot of time, especially when you work in corporate, they make you feel like that you owe them everything. They make you feel like that like you're lucky to be here. Like
That's what the system
they
does.
it does do that, and so you then believe that and don't invest in yourself and your development because you're relying on them to do that for you because they own you, right? So when I then had this voice, when I actually was able to to lend my voice to topics and really talk about it, and people were listening and engaging and following, I took my power back.
Yeah.
And so now when I talk about leadership, I talk about taking your power back. When you take your power back, you you are in the driving seat of your career. That's when you really own your career, right? Um so yeah, I think that was 2021, 2022. You know, I was being invited to sit on stages. I was sitting with, leaders that I had always looked up to. I'm now sitting on panels with them. I'm now contributing to them. I'm now being seen as a thought leader. I'm winning awards. All of them things just gave me my power back, took it away from being reliant. Have you heard of the gratitude complex?
Well,
So from a so it's and I've heard it in a few places, so it's definitely not my own, but I really relate and connect to it. And it's this notion that when you come from lower socioeconomic background, or you come from an underserved community, or you come from a ethnically diverse community in some instances, and you get your first job, you get your first gig, you get your first break, you put a lot of emphasis on that company. Wow, I'm so grateful that you gave me a job. I'm so grateful that I'm here. You are so grateful that you are just here. And so when companies look at satisfaction scores and they cut it by socioeconomic, they never see a problem. Because people are happy. Like, if I am the first one in my family to work in a corporate space, of course I am happy. Of course I'm going to recommend. They always like, we don't have a problem with socioeconomic. Our engagement scores are great. Yeah, they are great, but you need to look into that. They are great because people from that community are probably the first to ever work in a corporate space. They've got this gratitude to the company. They don't want to lose that space. They're holding on for dear life, right? Because they're just one job away from getting back to where they'd come from. So I say that to say that I had that for a long time. I'm not going to lie. 6-7 years into my career, I would describe myself as being blue blood. I wasn't going anywhere. I was going to stay with Barclays forever and ever and ever. you know, that was I was so grateful that they opened the door for me. They gave me that job, and it was leaders and mentors that were like, "Yeah, but you're hardworking, and you work for where you are, and you are great at what you do." And if you don't have people to remind you of that, if you don't have mentors that can say, actually, look, hold the mirror up. Yes, they gave you your first opportunity, but you didn't just stay there, did you? You're not cashing out. You've worked your way up. You've made it for yourself. And so, for me, I just think it's that was it. After that period of gratitude, then coming into my own, then realizing my voice has value and power. It unlocks something in you that allows you to grow at an exponential rate. And I think that's what happened to me. I think that's what happened.
it's interesting when that's then unlocked, the multiplier effect is the impact that you have on other people, and you give people that impotence, that agency that they can also do that because they see someone like you doing it. Because one of the biggest things people are scared of is like, oh, I'm working in the corporate space. Oh, I can't write down LinkedIn. I can't say this. I can't say that. I need to fall back. But seeing someone like you being in that position, be like, oh, I'm gonna lean into it. Um, Again, like I said, you got family, you got kids, so you got responsibilities. It's not like you could just go for it, but you went for it courageously and you stepped into the authenticity of who you are, and it led to so many more opportunities for you.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, yes, absolutely. But with grace. So because you have to be sensible. I am so sensible. Like I tell anyone who says, how are you doing it? Me and media relations are good friends, firstly, right? And I am sensible. I know, I'm never going to write anything that will compromise the positions that I hold, right? I am balanced in my view. And yeah, I have an opinion, but I allow people to have other opinions, opposing opinions to me. So it's not just about going out there and writing, whatever you want to write. And if you're angry one day, you go hit post. It's not that. What are you trying to do? I'm very clear on my purpose. What am I? I'm trying. What am I? What is my? What am I trying to do? I want people to learn from me. I want people to be inspired by me. I want people to be able to check their biases based on what I say, based on my experiences. And so I'm going to write in a way that gives people time to self reflect. And that's what I do. Every time I write in a way, my style of writing is to get people to take a step back and think, oh, have I said that before? Probably I have, or that's happened to me before. Oh, I've seen that happen to somebody before. And just take a minute to check themselves.
What do you actually want to be known for then?
I want to be known as somebody who went for what she believed in, stood in her power. I want to be known for my audaciousness when it comes to clarity of my career, but also clarity on what's right, equality, equity, inclusion. I say to people, I said this to my mentor before. I want to be that person that people think of when they think of DEI. When they think of, who can we call to really help our leaders understand how they are going to be better at leadership. I want that to be me. Who can we call if we want our leaders and our business to be more inclusive and to make people want to come here and be themselves? I want that to be me. So that's the journey.
As you're navigating that journey, and one of the things that I've seen you do, and you kind of alluded to when you talked about the gratitude complex, is that sense of identity. A lot of times I see people struggle to step into their power because of the gratitude complex. I see people struggle to be able to have the clarity of voice of what you say that is what you want to be known for because of that identity piece. Now, you've been in a space like Barclays and been there for 17 years and then choosing to walk away into something brand new. What was it like making that decision, or was it like moving into somewhere brand new? Because I think that's something that can easily stop people because you lead into that fear. What if I go somewhere else? It's not great. What if all that kind of stuff can easily come out? So what was that like for you? Because I think that can actually help so many people unlock some of the internal that they're navigating.
It was one of the hardest decisions I've ever made, hands down. I have a mentor, Yetunde Huffman, um, who's a phenomenal woman. And I joined a program 2 years ago called Solaris. It's an executive leadership program for Black women. And one of the things I learned there was that there's a saying: go when it's easiest to stay when it's easiest to go. And how I translated that was actually, Hannah, seize the opportunity when things are great. Because what that does is it gives you so much leverage. And so I made director at Barclays. I was well respected, well regarded, loving my job, had got a real good balance between what I was doing outside and internally. And then this opportunity came to me, and it was like, there was a part of me that was like, well, why would you go now? Like, everything's great. Like, like, you're safe there. And then there was another part of me that was like, go now, everything's great. Leverage, because um and so that saying just rang true to me. Go when it's easiest to stay when it's easiest to go. And so I took a leap. It was hard. I left a lot of good friends behind. I left a great track record and brand, but I also left the door wide open. If in my opinion, right, from what I was told when I was leaving, and that's great. Everything is about relationships. There is nobody at Barclays that I wouldn't call today and say, look, dealing with this, how can you help me? And they would help me. And so that's legacy, right? And so yeah, I made the jump. It was hard. It was very emotionally taxing for me. And so some of my friends who had left before me, they were like, I do not know what your problem is. Leave and just be done with it. And I was like, no, I'm going on Friday to say bye to the building. And that was my own way of kind of stepping into the new. And yeah, I haven't looked back. It's awesome. It was definitely the right decision that I made.
How can people support you on your journey? Because what you carry, what you do, the weight's a lot, especially when you're front and center, when you're being that voice, be the one that people look to in a space right now that has got a lot worse, in particular the last like 12 to 18 months. It's a heavier burden to carry post George Floyd. So how can people actually support you in that journey?
So I suppose I'm gonna be a bit avoidant here and avoid the question and say the way they can support the cause is by actively being part of the movement. Right? You can't sit on the sidelines with these things. Like, speak up, talk up, call somebody that you don't know, speak to them, ask them, how you can help them, be an ally, like, actively lean in. You can be a bystander from the sidelines. You can watch this podcast and say, "Oh, that was a great," but are you going to share it with somebody? You're going to be inspired? Are you going to send it to somebody who's coming up the ranks and say, "Listen to this, you might be inspired by this"? What are you going to do? That's how I think we can drive this. How can you help me personally? That is a good question. Um, yeah, it's a good question.
I'll ask you when we finish this again. I guess as we wrap up and come to an end, curious to know from your perspective, especially as someone who's a leadership is really important to you. How do you define leadership?
I define leadership as having the ability to create a vision, but not only the vision, the pathway, and then supporting, coaching, mentoring people through that pathway. Because even you have a vision, not everyone lands at your vision. You know, they drop off, they go a different direction. But if through the pathway, through the journey, you've been able to touch them and impact them, then that's leadership to me. Um, so sometimes people say, well, as a leader, you've got to have a vision, everyone needs to follow you. But no, not everyone's going to get to your vision. And that's okay. But if during the journey you've impacted them some way, then actually that's you. That's your role fulfilled as a leader. You impact people to fulfill their own visions, maybe.
You're someone who, I think one of the things that always resonate with me, every interaction that we have, is I love your authenticity. Like you practice what you preach, and you walk it strong. And seeing you go from, I remember I was there in the 500 days, go from 500 days to where you're right now from a LinkedIn perspective, but more importantly, the amount of things that you're creating and pouring back into the next generation and coming out. is very inspiring. It's very impactful. And I can also see where that vision kind of comes from. That when you ask that question around what do you want to be known for, you're already doing that in some way, shape, some forms. And there's so much more to come
Yeah.
from you. And honestly, I would say like let people know when they're around, like you're proud of what they're doing, and it's amazing to see. So thank you, I mean, for coming to just sharing your journey. Like I said, I know you're busy. There's so much that's going on in your life, but we were able to make it happen today. So it's been dope. It's been really good talking to you.
It's so awesome and so inspiring, and I love everything that you're doing, creating spaces, elevating, amplifying voices. So important. So thank you, and as always, whatever I can do to support, let me know.
It's Everyday Leadership. We will see you all next week.